For those who have not had the privilege of knowing Mr. Darius Khambatta, we would like to share that he is not only a towering figure in the legal industry, but a transformative force as a trustee of Tata Trusts and a passionate and tireless advocate for poor. A true Zoroastrian who continues to inspire future generations, both in the legal and the business world, and well known for the mutual trust and friendship he fosters with friends and business associates alike. He's admired for his gentleness, his soft yet firm handshake, his impeccable manners, and his warm and genuine smile. Beyond his professional achievements, Mr. Khambatta is a man of immense character. He is observant, attentive, and deeply knowledgeable, and an invaluable mentor. Thank you, Mr. Khambatta, for being a constant source of inspiration and your unwavering support to the community and GCZT especially. Your presence is deeply appreciated, and your legacy and spirit will continue to guide and inspire us for the rest of our lives. May we request you to come to the podium? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I couldn't have written a better obituary for myself. Yeah. I'm delighted to be here and delighted with the topic that I've been given, which is, and I tweaked it a bit, I have to confess, happiness to those who give happiness to others, what we need to do as a community. So, to my very distinguished colleagues on the dais and to my distinguished friends and colleagues in the audience, good afternoon. And I want to start by saying how wonderful it is that we are part of not only an Indian community, but a global community and a diaspora, because I think that is the need of the hour. When Barjorji asked me to speak, there was no question of my refusing, because Barjorji Atia personifies the mantras of faith that are the columns of our religion. As we know, of course, propagation of happiness is a fundamental part of being a Parsi. It is an essential part of our brand. And of course, as you know, Yushtavyati Yasna 43.1, happiness to him who gives happiness to whomsoever else. And our basic Yathavaryo prayer. He who helps any person in need will in turn be helped through the power of Almighty God. I have found that in my personal life, and I'm sure each of you have found it in yours as well. But first, a word about Barjorji. He has known me from birth, and my earliest memories of him were as a boy of 6 or 7 at the annual Jashan of Mullah and Mullah, the law firm of which he was a senior partner. My grandfather used to be a partner, and Barjorji, I think, used to work with him. I used to attend this Jashan not only for the food, which was terrific, I must tell you. We used to even get boy sometimes from Gujarat, but also to meet everyone, and I enjoyed it. And as I sat next to my grandfather, 2 people stand out in my memory, Barjorji and Erach Desai, who was, of course, a former chairman of the Parsi Panchayat. So Barjorji has been a family friend since the 1960s, at least, if not earlier. But it was only after I joined the profession that I came to recognize his true munificence, philanthropy, and kindness. And I can truly say, Barjorji, thy name is charity. Now, following Nadar is a very tough act to follow. I mean, he brilliantly encapsulated the issues before us as a community and what the Global Council is so nobly doing. And I was extremely impressed by what I saw and the words that accompanied it: benevolence, compassion, transforming lives. Our community is at a very significant cusp in its history. Some Cassandras warn of extinction. The demographic graph is alarming. The Zoroastrian population in India, at least, peaked in 1941 at about 1,15,000. This number fell to about 58,000 in 2011, and I dare say we may be even below 50,000 today. Some of this decline, no doubt, is due to emigration, but it is untenable to deny the reality of rapidly falling numbers. Yet one trend which we seem to ignore is that from 1861, when we were about 85,000, our population almost doubled up to 1941 when we reached 115,000. And that is a trend which we should keep in mind. If one studies Parsi cosmopolitan philanthropy, strangely it follows a similar trend. First, the opium boom in the early part of the 19th century, and then the cotton boom in the latter part enriched our coffers. And we flourished, no doubt, as a favored community under the British. There were so many famous Parsi merchants. Pramji Kawasji Banaji, the Kawasji Jangir, Sir Dinshaw Petit, Behramji Jibai, Sir Behramji Jijibai, and of course, above all, Sir Jamsetji Jijibai, the merchant prince of Bombay, my ancestor. I also can't forget my wife's ancestry. Bamanji Hormasji Wadia and Adesha Hormasji Wadia, in turn descendants of the famed Wadia shipbuilders of Surat. And some of you may know that they built a lot of warships for the British, including HMS Minden, on whose decks it is famed were composed the lyrics of the Star Spangled Banner, the national anthem of the US, by Francis Scott Key. Close on their heels came the industrialists, the great Jamsetji Tata and his great sons. We tend to undervalue them sometimes, Sir Dorab Tata and Sir Ratan Tata, the distinguished Godrej family of whom we have distinguished members present today, and the Ness Wadia families. I think Christopher Wren's epitaph, Lector si monumentum, requires circumspice. If you need a monument, reader, if you need a monument, just look around you, is opposite to Parsi philanthropy in Bombay. You can scarcely turn a corner without seeing some product of the charity that the Parsi community has endowed on India and on this great city, which was in largely a cosmopolitan manner. And today that glorious tradition is being carried on, amongst others, by the Tata Trusts. Their original corpus, as I'm sure all of you know, were the personal estates of Sir Dorab Tata, including the famous Jubilee Diamond, and Sir Ratan Tata. And to some extent, that philanthropic zeal has tapered off after 1947. Parsi numbers and charity flourished until independence, and then has started a decline. And after 1947, there are few examples in Bombay particularly of cosmopolitan Parsi charity. I mean, you had, of course, the Jangir Art Gallery, the Jamshed Bhabha Theatre, and the Tata Trusts are continuing that. Now, what has led to this? First, we must consider what were the values that led to our rise. I believe, and this is a personal belief, there's no proof, that they come directly from the core tenets of Zoroastrianism. First, asha, or truth or righteousness. I never tire of repeating this, but Herodotus, the so-called father of all historians, in his histories, and he was, of course, biased against the Persians, but one of the little nuggets that he gives us is that every Persian, and he wrote this sometime in 440 or 450 BC, he said every Persian boy between the ages of 5 and 25 is taught only 3 things: how to ride a horse, how to use a bow and arrow, and how to speak the truth. Just consider the profundity of that last bit of his toss-off remark. How to speak the truth. That was seen as something that you had to educate our youth in. And of course, he also adds, and I don't know whether this is true, he said that Persians never liked taking loans because according to them, inevitably, that led to lying. My father imbibed in me this strong importance of speaking the truth, and it's not easy. Sometimes it is embarrassing, sometimes it's unpopular, but it's important. And what I got from my mother was instead tolerance and urvan. What is urvan? That's the second great quality in our religion. In the Aunavaiti, the 30th Yasna, what did Jarthust Sahib proclaim? He said, "Hear with your ears the great truths. Consider them with clear thought, deciding between the two and choosing man by man, today he would say woman by woman, each one for himself, before this great new age is ushered in, each one of you awakened to this message. Little wonder that great scholars have described Zoroastrianism as the religion of free will. We were the most entrepreneurial of all communities, the first to embrace travel abroad. Then had the spirit of adventure, liberalism, and the thirst to absorb thoughts and beliefs from afar. Our community was imbued with tolerance and acceptance. This was no accident of fate. I believe it stemmed directly from the credo of Urvan. Couple Urvan with Sarosh, our inner conscience or inner voice. And I think that should keep us on the right path. The third great core tenet is the propagation of happiness. As our merchant forefathers did, we must reignite the zeal of doing charity. Let it start with each one of us individually. For too long have we gotten used to making donations from trusts settled by others. Let us do it from our own resources. And let us do it meeting the test of that great prelate of Shapur II, Adarbad Maraspant, who characterized charity as thus. He said, to give without being asked, to give immediately when required, to give as promised. Pithy, and like Nada's poetry, short, concise, but to the point. Let me give you an example of to give as promised. Let's go right back to antiquity. The book of Ezra in the Old Testament refers to Cyrus the Great as the anointed of the Lord. He's the only non-Gentile to be called this in the Bible. And why was that? Because when he conquered Babylon in 539 BC, he liberated the Jews who were then slaves of the Babylonians. And he said, you can go back to your homeland, you can rebuild Solomon's temple, and I will fund it. Just consider, I will fund the building of a temple of another religion. Even though they are my slaves, I don't need to do anything about it. Now he died, and of course, as we know, there was a war of succession, but ultimately Darius the Great succeeded to the throne. So the Jews went back to him saying, by the way, the last Persian emperor has promised us this. Now Darius the Great kept that promise. And it was from his treasury that the Jews went back and built the second temple, the last remnants of which are the Wailing Wall. So on an aside, as a lawyer, I would say we have a pretty good claim to property rights over the Wailing Wall. But remember, Darius the Great gave as promised, Adarbad Maraspant, who of course said this centuries after him. This was the embodiment of Humata, Hukta, Huvarshta, good thoughts, good words, good deeds. And I don't think you can bifurcate the three go together. Indeed, that's the motto that adorns the crest of the Tata family. Starting with the J.N. Tata Endowment Fund in 1892, Tata scholars have been prized ever since then. And there's so much philanthropy and charity that the Tata Trusts have done. This is not the place where I can sit and recount it. But this does bring to my mind someone who has had a profound influence on me, that is Ratan Tata. He had a vision for the Tata Group, and he did not fight shy of reaching for the stars, not always with success. He had a similar vision for the Tata Trusts and was engaged in transforming them into modern foundations that became catalysts for change in society. He therefore redirected the focus of the Tata Trusts into larger core projects. 7 core areas were identified, because he found that to be far more impactful than having a myriad smaller causes. His personality was amazing, and I want to share something which is very personal with you because I think I must speak about it. During my first stint with the Dorab Tata Trust, which was in 2015, 2016, he was ever courteous, engaging. He made me sit next to him in every meeting. As you might know, I had to resign in very difficult circumstances. And this was purely for personal reasons, which made it impossible for me to continue. I did so face to face with him in a meeting. I don't believe in just sending letters. And my resignation was not over any disagreement on policy or actions. I made that clear then, I make that clear now. Everyone told me that this is the end of your friendship with Ratan. Quote, he never forgets anything and will harbor a grudge against you forever, is what I was repeatedly told. But I had no choice. I had to do what I thought was right. Now, years later, when fate brought us together again, the first conversation we had was a face-to-face 2-hour post-mortem of the past events. And his memory was impeccable. He said, I took you there, you sat here, you sat there, you said this, I said this. He went through the whole thing absolutely impeccably. I again explained the personal conundrum that I had been placed in that had caused me to resign. And I thought, let me be upfront and end by saying, and I told him that I have to tell you that I still have no regrets. This was several years later. And put in the same circumstances, I would do the same thing. I expected a wall of ice. Instead, he said this, until my dying day, I will never forget those words. And I quote him. He said, I totally understand why you resigned, and I respect you for it. This is greatness. Tolerance, understanding, compassion. And Ratan Tata embodied these virtues. He always kept his promise. Remember, at the time of the nano below 1 lakh, a promise, is what he said. He lived in complete simplicity, relatively speaking, for his position. One visit to his house would tell you that. And I'm happy to see that our dear family, the Godrejs, also live in that same simplicity. That is greatness. He was a true Zoroastrian, although he did not wear his religion on his sleeve and he eschewed ritual. And my vision for our community is based on these qualities. I believe we have to turn to the core tenets of Zoroastrianism to draw from a pool of strength, not for ritual or dogma, but for a credo of conduct. That is not to undervalue the power of ritual or prayer. Indeed, for many, it concentrates the mind and the spirit, and for many, it is support. But it is the core tenets of how we should live that I believe are the ultimate objectives. And I have certain ideas. This is not a laundry list. This is not exhaustive. It may not even be correct, but let me share them with you. First, let us not underestimate our ability to impact life in India and across the world. Our size or lack of it is probably our strength, for it ensures we are a threat to no one. We are and we have and must remain neutral. I have always agreed with our practical policy in India of not actively converting. That, I believe, has stood us in good stead. But our size is our strength if only we could see that. That's the first thing. And I'll tell you how that works a little later. The second is our integrity or asha or righteousness. That's our USP. Let us jealously guard it. Our constant refrain must be to honor those who live by the truth, not necessarily those who made the most money or achieved the greatest success. Thirdly, those to whom Ahura Mazda has been kind in material terms should be judged by the Adarbad Maraspan test. That is the personal charity that they do. That is the only test. 4, I believe we must reignite our spirit of adventure. Adventure not only physically, but adventures of ideas. And for that, our small size is actually an advantage. Let's think of 2 or 3 ways in which we could use this. One is, let's harness the vast amounts our forefathers left us in so many trusts, large and small. There is a crying need first for greater transparency in the manner in which our trusts conduct their affairs. This will ensure against, albeit the stray cases of dishonesty that afflict some. And then there is also the need for consolidation of action. Some part of the charitable spending of all our charitable trusts should be pooled towards a common purpose, which each on their own would find beyond their means, such as setting up of an institute of training for skills, or indeed imparting higher education, perhaps a college for medicine or engineering. These would be minority educational institutions, and hence a large number of seats could be reserved for Parsis. One trust can't do it on its own, but concerted, coordinated action across the diaspora and across the spectrum of trusts might be able to do it. Secondly, and I saw this in your film, mentorship. Very important. We have so many Parsis, both here and abroad, who have attained remarkable success in their fields. They can act as mentors to guide and shape our youth and to assist them to find and succeed in fields of work With the available technology, this need not be limited by geography. It can be even virtual. Perhaps some app should be set up where successful Parsis or Parsis who have things to share contribute their time and their expertise, and our youth can then tap in and communicate with them and be mentored by them. And thirdly, thinking out of the box. An entrepreneurship of ideas should be encouraged, not only financially, but by honoring such people. So this is the fourth element, that is reignite entrepreneurship. The fifth is, of course, a very practical one. I think we should really be making plans for protecting all our properties, especially in far-flung places. I don't think there's enough thought that's gone into this. It's all ad hoc, and it depends on the persons involved. Sixth, very important, Nada referred to this, and I totally agree with him, we must support our priesthood, not only financially, but emotionally. They are the link we have with our great religion. Let that not die out. We must encourage them to actively teach and debate our core tenets without fear or favor. They must interact with our youth, and our youth must interact with them. And when I see Ramya Karanja here, I'm very enthused because I had occasion a few years ago to interact with him, and I know how far-sighted he is, how wise he is, and what someone like him and so many others can do to inculcate the spirit of Zoroastrianism in our youth. Now, seventh, let's be very frank. All this will not be possible without an open, liberal environment where people do not fear to express themselves and suggest new ideas. We must not fear free speech. We must foster it. For too long have the loudest and most strident voices drowned out the silent majority. Now, history shows us that transformative solutions and ideas often start as the most unpopular. Let all voices be heard. Let them all be allowed expression, not just the loudest or the most populist. Let us not always run away from discussing quote-unquote controversial topics. It is necessary to protect and hear the speech we disagree with, and not just that which we agree with and which will entomb us in our comfort zones. 8, let us try and be inclusive and accepting of others. Do not treat intermarriage as a pariah. It is a reality, as Nader has said. The numbers are huge. Let's treat that as an opportunity rather than as an unspeakable truth. For how long, how are we going to nurture and pass down our Parsipano for future generations? Surely by not ostracizing them or discriminating against. Then 8, live and let live is a surer policy than drown out. Let us learn to respect each other's points of view, not demonize each other. Hear each one of us for ourselves and choose the best path forward. Exercise Urvan and always live by the truth. Let us not waste our precious time and resources by squabbling with each other. And finally, adaptability. Charles Darwin, in his Origin of the Species, had very wisely concluded, after a lot of scientific research, that it is not the strongest of the species, nor even the most intelligent of the species that survives. It is the one that is most adaptable to change. I think the time has come to adapt and to hopefully come out stronger than ever before. We owe it to our forefathers, we owe it to Ahura Mazda, we owe it to Jarthos Sahib to ensure the survival as a practiced religion of Zoroastrianism, not only as a theoretical subject. That is, after all, why years ago we fled from Iran to save our religion. And remember, we are all trustees for future Parsis. We each have a duty to realize our dream and keep alive for them what Mahatma Gandhi had said of us. In numbers, beneath contempt, but in contribution, beyond compare. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Khambatta. Mr. Khambatta, may we have you here? Please, 1 minute. What a memorable speech.